Today I have selected the topic of theft and extortion for the demo class of the online coaching of APPO and assistant APPO and additional APPO. Essential ingredients necessary for the theft are: the person who intend to take the property must have dishonest intention. Here the dishonest intention is explained under section 24 of IPC, that is, whoever does anything with the intention of causing wrongful gain to any person or wrongful loss to another person, then it is considered as a dishonest intention. Even dishonest intention is called as a malified intention, which can be represented in the form of mens rea. This is a core element of the theft. The property being taken has to be a movable property. So here when we comes to the movable property, the subject of theft must be movable property. Immovable property cannot be stolen. Movable property is such type of property which is able to move easily and it is not stationed or which is not immobile. The kind of property which cannot be moved and attached to the earth is considered as an immobile property. Such property is not subject of theft. It becomes the subject of theft when it is taken off from the surface of the earth. And third ingredient is, such property must be taken away from the possession of the owner or from any person who has the possession of said property. Means here, to clarify the doubt, I will say a thing that the property is not necessary to be in the possession of the owner. Even sometimes if the owner entrusts the property to some other person, for example, if A entrusts his cattle to the B and says him that take care of the cattle for a week, in the meantime if the theft of the cattle was committed by the other person, then obviously here the B is not the owner, but even though he is not a owner, the theft was committed by the other person, then that is considered as a theft. Because of that only clearly the definition has explained that the possession of the owner or any person. So if the property is in their existence, obviously if any person removes the property from their possession, it is considered as a theft. Such property has to be taken away without the consent of such person. Here one more point is important, that whatever the property was taken by the person, that should be without the consent of the owner or any of the person on whose possession the property was there. So these are the main ingredients which are needed to attract this definition of the theft. And I give one example for you. Here the consent may be either express or implied consent. So there is no need of consent directly. Even sometimes implied consent will also be given. So if the implied consent is given by any of the person, so what comes the act of the person? I'll explain with the illustration. A has friendly terms with B. He goes into the room of B in his absence and takes away a book without his express consent for the purpose of merely reading it. And here the A has the intention also that to return back the book after completion of his reading. Here it is probable that A might have conceived that what he thought that B impliedly consent to use. Obviously A and B are the friends. Obviously A, what he consented means, might be B gives me the book, what is wrong in that? In that purview he has taken the book in the absence of B, but here he felt that there is an implied consent of the B. Then when the thought of when the A has a thought of returning back the book, then it is not considered as theft. However, if A intends to take the book of the B in his absence, thinking that B has given the implied consent as he is a friend of B, but after taking the book into his home and keeping in his bookshelf, he got the thought that why I should return the book to B. Then obviously the act of the attitude means the act of the A comes under the purview of the theft and is punishable for the offense of theft. The punishment of theft is defined under section 379, that is imprisonment may extend to 3 years or fine or both. When we comes to the classification of offence, section 379 IPC is cognizable in nature and non-bailable and they said offense is compoundable by the owner of the property, means it can be compound if the owner agrees for the compromise, and the offense is triable by the any of the magistrate. And I would like to put forth some of the landmark judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court, that is parallel Bhargava versus State of Rajasthan, AAR 1963 SC 1094. In this case, a government employee took a file from the government office and presented it to someone else and brought it back to the office after 2 days of taking it. Here the Honorable Supreme Court has said that even though the employee has taken the file only for the sake of 2 days, but here the employee has a dishonest intention to misuse that file. So then obviously the act of the that employee is considered and comes under the purview of the theft, and it constitutes the dishonest intention. Means here the employee's intention is not fair. He taken the file only for the using of in the other means, in malified means. Then obviously the dishonest intention shown in that, so the employee is punishable under section 379 IPC. And in next case, K.N. Mehra versus State of Rajasthan, AAR 1957 SC. Here the Supreme Court has stated that even temporary retention, means a temporary retention of property by a person wrongfully gaining thereby, or temporary keeping out of property from the person legally entitled thereto, may amount to theft. Means here the permanently keeping of property is not necessary to attract the ingredients of the theft. I'll give the example for you. A is a friend of B, and while A is living to Tirupati for a pilgrimage with his family members, A has given his cattle, means A has entrusted the work, means B has entrusted the work to the A to take care of the cattle. So what he given the duties to the A means, he said that A, you have to keep the feed for the cattle, and you have to take care of the water and everything, you have to clean the shed and everything. So B said that I'll return back within 10 days. So by the interest, by the work of the interest, A is taking care of the cattle of the B. In the meantime, A got the dishonest intention to move some cattle from the shed. So he taken the cattle from the shed and he used this for this personal gain. So even though here the A entrusted the work to the means B entrusted the work to the A, in the meantime A has taken some property, and he used for the sake, means for the sake of milk, and also for the sake of other things, and earned some money. So this also is considered as a theft. Why? Because here the implied consent is given by the B only for the sake of take care of the cattle, but not using the milk and other things whatever means coming from the cattle. So here the acts of the A is considered as a theft. So here only for the some particular time he has taken, but even though for some particular time also, if he has a dishonest intention to use a particular thing in the absence of that person, obviously it comes to the theft. And next case is State of Maharashtra versus Vishwanath, AAR 1979 SC 1825. The court, Honorable Supreme Court, held that the transfer of possession of movable property without the consent of the person in possession need not, however, be permanent or for considerable length of time, nor it is necessary that the property should be found in the possession of the accused. Even a transit transfer is sufficient to meet the requirement of section 378. So for this I will give the small example. A has taken the property from the possession of the B. So here he is intending to take the property for particular time, only for the particular duration of 10 days or 15 days. So that also, if he has A has a dishonest intention, even he is not taking the property for wholly, but even though it is considered as a theft. And if he is moving the property in the transit, means he not gained any profit from the property whatever is stolen, but even though in the transit also, if he found the property, means C noticed that A is taking the property of B, then obviously C caught the A. Then in the meantime the police has caught the A. So in the transit, means it is not used for his personal use for gain or anything, but in transit he was caught. Then it is also considered as a theft. So it was laid down by the Honorable Supreme Court. And next section is 380, that is theft in dwelling house. The main difference between the 378 and 380 is 378 can be committed on the places which is not a dwelling house, means that is a road or anything. I'll give example. If A snatched the chain of one woman who was walking on the road, or if not driving on the vehicle, then obviously that comes under the 378 attraction, and the punishment will be imposed under 379. But if the same A committed the offence in the house of B when she was slept or in her absence, then obviously section 380 attracts. Means the offence commission in the dwelling house used for the purpose of human stay. So the definition also clearly explains that the person who commits the offence in theft in a building or a vessel which is used for the purpose of human dwelling, or is being used for the custody of the property, means for staying of the people, if uses house or vessel or any of the means, and even for custody of the property, means any clock rooms, or if not any warehouses, or if anything where we store the property. In that also, if any person commits the offence, obviously that comes that act of the person attracts the section 380 of IPC. And the punishment for section 380 of IPC is described, and the imprisonment is which may extend to the 7 years and shall also be liable to fine. And here the dwelling house is any of the thing where the human beings reside. Even sometimes it may be the cave, it may be the full furnished house, it may be the half furnished house, it may be the temporary house, not pakka house. So whatever the house, when human beings reside in that, then this section attracts if any person commit the offence. I'll give one example for clarification of understanding of this section, that one railway waiting room is there. In that, one person is waiting in the railway waiting room, and for it is temporarily, means for the sake of some time. If the person has missed his train and he's waiting for the next train, obviously he'll wait in the waiting room of the railway station. While he is waiting, he taken a small nap for over a point of 5 minutes or 6 minutes. In the meantime, he lost his bag. Obviously here the section 380 attracts, even though the railway waiting room is not the own house of the person who lost his property, even though it is a temporary house. So here definition is not for only permanent houses, even temporary place also where we reside for particular time. If commission of the offence committed happened, obviously we can file the case under section 380. So next comes the section 381, theft done by a clerk or servant of property in possession of the master. So here the clerk or the servant or any of the labor or any of the person who is in the employment, means as a employee, and he committed the offence of theft, the property of employer, or if not the property of employment, means the personal things of the employer. If the personal things means if the employer has a gold chain, or if not he has some laptop or something he kept in the employment place. If the servant or if not the clerk or any of the employee takes away the property of the employer, then it section 381 only attracts. Even though if the means the property which was thefted by the employee is the property of employment, means any machinery, that is a chairs or if a system, or if not sofa, or if not any money, it was stolen, then obviously section 381 attracts. And the punishment for the 381 also 7 years, which may extend to the 7 years, and also liable to the fine. And remember all of you, the definition means section 378's punishment is defined under 379, but 380 and 381 definition means punishment is defined under the same sections, not the other sections. So in IPC, when we are taking for some sections the punishment is defined under the separate sections, but for some sections the punishment is defined with the ingredients, means substantively the ingredients of the offence were stated, and in the same section the punishment also described. So when we comes to the 380 and 81, The punishment is described on the same section, and here we have to take into the note one point that for 380 and 381 also the punishment is which may extend to the 7 years and fine or both. So it is very easy to understand. For 378 the punishment is 379, under 379 that is 3 years or fine or both. For 380 and 81 same punishment, that is 7 years and fine or both. And when we comes to the section 382, theft is done after the preparation made for causing death or hurt or restraint to any person in order to committing of such theft, or in order to be effecting to his escape after committing of such theft, or in order of for retaining of such property taken by such theft, then such person shall be punished with rigorous imprisonment for a term which may extend to 10 years and shall also be liable to fine. Here the point to be noted is, in this definition we have three things. First is, at the time of commission of the offense, if the person A is intending to commit the theft, so he made preparation while commission only, at the time of committing only he made preparation of his mind that if something happens, if anybody obstruct me, restrain me, then in duration of that time if something happens, I will cause death of the person who is restraining me. I will cause some hurt to that person. I will cause some restraint to that person. In that mindset, he enters into the commission of the theft. And while committing the theft, so at the time of committing the theft and while committing the theft also, if somebody obstruct him, then obviously he had the intention of the same thing, and he prepares himself that to do the hurt, causing of the death, or if not hurt or restraining of the person. And the third one is, while he is moving the property, also if the sum of the activities is done, means he himself keeps in the mind that if somebody restrain me by retaining my property, means A wanted to keep his property in one of the warehouse where he want to store the property. In the meantime, when he is intending to retain the property, some person is restraining for that. Obviously, means A intending to restrain that person, to stop that person, or if not he intend to cause the hurt to that person, or if not some extent he may thinks to cause the hurt also. Means he makes the preparations, not commission, only preparation, means he prepares with the weapons and everything. Then that act of the A is considered as comes under the 382, and the punishment for the offence is 10 years, which may extend to the 10 years and also shall liable to the fine. So these are the 4 sections which attracts for the theft. And next we goes with the topic of extortion, that dealt under 383 to 389. And the main difference of the theft and extortion is, when we take about the theft only the movable property can be used for the commission of the theft. But when we comes to the extortion, that may be the movable and also the immovable property. Section 383 of the Indian Penal Code defines the extortion, that if a person intentionally, means here the intention is the main thing. When we comes to the theft, there the dishonest intention is there, but in this intentionally puts another person in a position of fear, means he'll keep the other person in a position of fear or threat, means fear or threat to cause him, means what is his intention to make him fear or threat, is that to cause him injury or decisively persuade him so that he may deliver the property or other valuable goods to another person, or any document which has been signed and can be turned as a valuable security. So some little bit of confusion and also misunderstanding will be there by this section, because it used a number of different terms which is not pronounced regularly by us. So here I'll give the brief explanation by the example, then you can understand easily before going to the ingredients of the offense. Here for example, A point a gun to B on his head, and he demands for money or valuable material, whatever it may be. On such threat, B delivers any property to A. then the acts of A is known as extortion. So in the same example, I'll go with the other way. So here the means the threat may be for the person who is going to delivery or for any other person. The definition itself clearly says that the threat can be, means in the, when we goes with the essentials, in the essentials it clearly explained that an act of the person which causes imminent threat or injury to any person. Any person includes he himself or any other person who he has interest, his daughter, if not his friend, or if not his wife, or if not any other person who he has interest. Then if he threats that he does some imminent danger activity to him or other person, then obviously in such fear, if he does, so obviously it comes to the extortion. And second ingredients is most needed is the act must be done intentionally or deceitfully. So if A is doing, in general, if the A is keeping the toy pistol in the neck of the B and is saying that I'll kill you, and is playing some game, here it is not considered as a deceitful means, because toy pistol, if he trigger the button also, toy pistol does not do anything for the B. So in this we can't think that the A has the intention. So here the intention has to be clearly shown by the act of the A. Then only the extortion section applies. Such a person intend to cause injury to another person in which he seeks interest. So with that intention and deceitful means, here the A wanted to do something injury to the other person to bring back his interest. Means what is he interested? He is interested in the money, to dragging the money from the B, or if not, to make any document, false document, and take the signature of the B, or what he want whether he want any valuable security. So whatever he is intending, he takes from the B by his deceitful means. And unreasonable force, I am particularly mentioning unreasonable force. So the force should be very unreasonable and should be shown through which a person seeks to take the property. So from whom he wanted to take the property, he has to use the unreasonable force for them, or any other valuable good of other person or any document, then it is considered as theft. Not only for the delivery of property. I give one example for you. If A threatens the B and in a fear that he causes death of B, or if not for his daughter or son, and he asks B to put the signatures on the blank paper, that he can write anything whatever he want. So in that threat of means killing his son or if not daughter, obviously he put the security, and this document obviously in subsequently turns as a valuable security. Then the act of the A also attracts under the section 380. So the difference is that even directly he can take the money, or he can secure some document which is used subsequently as a valuable security. So these are the ingredients to be attracted. And I give one of the example for you to understanding. If A who kidnapped B's child Z and demands a sum of rupees 10 lakhs for B by making a threat of injury would be caused to Z. So he says that I kidnapped your son Z, and if you won't deliver the 10 lakhs rupees to my account, or if not transfer, not if not orally, if you won't give also, obviously I'll kill, or if not cause the injury to your son, that is Z. In such threat, obviously B transfers the amount to A. Then the act of the A is known as a extortion. So the punishment of extortion is the same to the theft. So in the theft we have the punishment of 3 years or fine, or both defined under 379. In 384 also the same punishment is mentioned, that is which may extend to 3 years or fine, or both. So for remembrance, in your mind you keep that for 379 and 384 the punishment is same, that is 3 years or fine, or both. And classification of offences, the three: extortion is a cognizable and non-bailable, triable by any magistrate, and it is not compoundable. It can't be compounded, and it is not mentioned in the compoundable list which is dealt under section 320 of CRPC. And next comes to the 385, 386, 387 and 388 and 89. I'll just briefly read the title of the sections, because as this is a demo class, I can't go extensively with the every section. In the regular classes, obviously we goes with the in-depth manner with n number of examples. I given only some examples for explaining the definition, but in our regular classes we uses for single ingredients we use 10 to 12 examples that will be set in the minds of the aspirant to write and understand the concept and put whatever he intending to put in the examination in a proper way. And I go with the section 386, that is extortion by putting a person in a fear of death or grievous hurt, and the punishment for that is 10 years and fine. And next section is 387, putting person in fear of death or of grievous hurt in order to commit extortion. The punishment is 7 years and fine. And section 388, extortion by threat of accusation of an offense punishable with death or imprisonment for life, etc. The punishment mentioned is imprisonment, either description for a term which may extend to 10 years and shall also be liable to fine. And 389, putting a person in fear of accusation of offense in order to commit extortion, and here the imprisonment may extend to the life also sometimes, and it may first it is 10 years and shall also be liable to fine. And if the offense is committed under 377, at present the 377 is repealed by the Honorable Supreme Court, but it as the act was not amended, it was mentioned in 389. So when the act of the 377 is committed, then obviously the punishment comes to the life imprisonment. By this theft and extortion definition is completed. Now I go with the landmark judgments of the definition is completed. Now I go with the landmark judgments of the extortion, that is Romesh Chandra Arora versus State AAR 1960 SC 154. In the said case, the facts are in the said case, the boy and girl were compelled by the accused person to remove their clothes. In the meantime, this accused person taken some of the photographs of the naked photographs of the A and B, and subsequently by showing the photographs he threatened the both A and B to extort some money and to deliver some money. So then the activity of that means the acts of the A is considered and comes under the purview of the extortion. And next case is AR Anthule versus RS Nayak AAR 1986 SC 2045. In this court, Honorable Supreme Court reported that injury may be direct or indirect, and in any case it should be before delivery of the property. Means that threat should be before delivery of the property. If A threats the B, that he caused some injury to him, or if not, he makes a defamatory statement, or if not, he prosecute him in a criminal case, false criminal case. So whatever the threat A caused to the B, that should be before delivery of the property only. Then only the offense of section 380 attracts for that. And next case is Shankar Bhagwat 1986 2 BHC 394. This is a Privy Court judgment, and Privy Court reported that it is not necessary that the threat should be used and the property received by one and the same individual. It may be the matter of arrangement between several persons that the threat should be used by some and the property received by the other, and they all would be guilty of extortion. So to understand this, I'll give one example for you. 4 members A, B, C and D are intending to commit the extortion. So A made a phone call to E by threatening him that he is going to kidnap his son who was in the school, who will relieved at the time of 5 o'clock. Then in such threat, B delivers the property, that is 2 lakhs rupees to the E delivers the property to the B. So B, by bringing the property, he handovers the property to the C, and the C, after some time, after passing of some time, after passing of the journey of some period, he delivers the property to the D. So here A, B, C, D and D, 4 members involved in the commission of the offense. Even though the threat was caused by one person and taking of property was receiving of property was the other person, but the act of the involvement of all the 4 members was there in the commission of the extortion. So all the persons were involved, and it was laid down by the Honorable Privy Council. And just briefly, I would like to say the differences between the theft and extortion. Section 378 deals with theft, and 383 deals with the extortion. And in theft, only movable property that is subjected to the theft. But when we comes to the extortion can be done for the movable property or immovable property, for delivery of movable or immovable property. And in the theft, without the consent of the owner, the property has to be taken. But here in extortion, here the consent will be obtained wrongfully by the person who is committing the extortion. Means that wrongful consent will be taken by threat of imminent danger to his life, or if not life of other persons, by threatening them to cause injury, or if not other means. So that is the difference. And here when we are coming to the theft, there is no role of force, using the force. But here in extortion, the person who is going to commit the extortion use the imminent force against the other person for delivery of the property. And in the theft, there is no delivery of the property, but in extortion, the delivery of the property is the main ingredients to attract the offense of the extortion. These are the small, a little bit of differences of the theft and extortion. By this, I conclude my topic, and this is a small elaborate explanation. But when we go with the regular classes, obviously, earlier I said, we go with the n number of examples and in extensive way to make you understand, concept oriented, and to recept it outside in a proper way.